Welcome to Beyond the Call, where history, leadership, and heroism come alive. Today's episode explores the extraordinary story of Donald Kirby Ross, a man whose actions during the attack on Pearl Harbor set the standard for courage under fire. As the USS Nevada came under relentless Japanese attack, Ross fought not on the deck or at the guns, but deep in the dynamo rooms, keeping the ship's power flowing against impossible odds. Twice overcome by heat and smoke and twice revived, he returned each time to his post until ordered to leave. If you enjoy learning more about military history and extraordinary individuals, be sure to visit Trackpads.com for articles, podcasts, and more. On the morning of December 7, 1941, as the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor erupted in a storm of bombs and torpedoes, one man aboard the USS Nevada stood fast amid chaos, fire, and destruction. War machinist Donald Kirby Ross, a Kansas-born sailor with over a decade of service, found himself at the center of the maelstrom when his ship's critical power systems came under threat. In those decisive moments, Ross faced an inferno of smoke, steam, and heat that drove most men to flee. Yet he remained, driven by duty to keep the ship alive. Ross's actions that day were not simply the reflex of training, they were the product of unwavering resolve and a belief that his ship and shipmates came before his own safety. Blinded, unconscious, and revived only to return to the fight, he kept the USS Nevada's dynamo rooms operating until ordered to abandon them. In doing so, he preserved the battleship's fighting capability and provided critical power during one of the most devastating attacks in American naval history. In recognition of his extraordinary courage and disregard for personal safety, Donald Kirby Ross became the first Medal of Honor recipient of World War II. His story is one of steadfast endurance under unimaginable pressure, a testament to the spirit of the sailors who stood their ground at Pearl Harbor and altered the course of history through sheer willpower. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, was a meticulously planned strike by the Imperial Japanese Navy aimed at crippling the United States Pacific Fleet before it could interfere with Japan's expansion across the Pacific. Launching from carriers positioned north of Hawaii, Japanese aircraft arrived in two waves, striking airfields and warships with bombs, torpedoes, and machine gun fire. In just over 2 hours, the attack inflicted massive losses. 8 battleships were damaged or sunk, hundreds of aircraft destroyed, and over 2,400 Americans killed. At the time, the USS Nevada was moored alone at the end of Battleship Row, a position that made her a prominent target. Commissioned in 1916, the Nevada had undergone modernization in the 1930s, but still relied on skilled machinists like Ross to keep her power systems running under combat conditions. On that Sunday morning, she was preparing for the day's routine when the first Japanese bombs fell. Her location allowed her crew a chance to get underway, a rare opportunity during the attack, but also drew intense enemy focus. The broader strategic backdrop was one of escalating tensions between the United States and Japan over territorial ambitions in Asia and the Pacific. Japan's military leadership believed that a swift, decisive strike could buy time to consolidate its gains without interference. In this context, Pearl Harbor was both a tactical gambit and a political gamble, one that would ultimately propel the United States into full-scale war. For sailors like Ross, the battle unfolded in close, suffocating spaces below decks, where damage control, power supply, and machinery operation determined whether the ship could fight, flee, or survive. Below the waterline, men contended with blinding smoke, deafening explosions, and scalding steam, their work unseen but critical to keeping the Nevada operational. It was in this unforgiving environment that Ross's resolve would be tested and his legend forged. Personal background: Donald Kirby Ross was born on December 8, 1910, in Beverly, Kansas, a small farming community in the heartland of America. Growing up amid the economic challenges of the post-World War I era, he learned the values of perseverance, responsibility, and self-reliance early in life. These traits, shaped by the rhythms of rural life, would later serve him well in the disciplined environment of the Navy. In June 1929, just months before the Great Depression gripped the nation, Ross enlisted in the United States Navy at Denver, Colorado. Initially trained as an apprentice seaman, He showed a keen aptitude for machinery and mechanical systems, earning him assignments in the engine and dynamo rooms of warships. His steady work ethic and technical skill led to his advancement through the enlisted ranks, and he was eventually appointed to warrant officer status as a warrant machinist, a position reserved for highly skilled technical specialists. Before the events at Pearl Harbor, Ross served aboard several ships and gained extensive experience in propulsion and power systems. His career included deployments to the Pacific and Atlantic, where he became known for his calm demeanor under pressure and his meticulous approach to shipboard engineering. By late 1941, he was serving aboard the USS Nevada, responsible for ensuring that the ship's critical electrical systems operated flawlessly in both peacetime and combat conditions. Following his heroism during the attack on Pearl Harbor, Ross continued his naval service throughout World War II and beyond. He later served on the staff of Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, contributing his expertise in engineering and fleet operations. Ross retired from the Navy in 1956 after 27 years of service, settling in Port Orchard, Washington. There, he remained active in veterans organizations, frequently speaking about his experiences and the importance of preparedness and duty. Donald Kirby Ross passed away on May 27, 1992, leaving behind a legacy not only as the first Medal of Honor recipient of World War II, but also as a symbol of unwavering dedication to ship and shipmates. His life stands as an enduring example of the quiet professionalism that defines the best traditions of the United States Navy. Medal of Honor citation: for distinguished conduct in the line of his profession, extraordinary courage, and disregard of his own safety during the attack on the fleet in Pearl Harbor by Japanese forces on December 7, 1941, when his station in the forward dynamo room became almost untenable due to smoke, steam, and heat, and he was blinded and unconscious. Warrant Machinist Ross insisted on returning after being rescued and continued to operate the after dynamo room until blinded and unconscious the second time. Upon being rescued again and revived, he returned to duty without hesitation until directed to abandon it, where valor was forged. What follows is a blend of recorded history and dramatized combat detail, constructed to convey the atmosphere, urgency, and intensity of Donald Kirby Ross's actions during the attack on Pearl Harbor. While the sequence of events and key facts align with historical records, descriptive elements have been added for immersion. The early hours of December 7, 1941, began as quietly as any peacetime Sunday aboard the USS Nevada. Moored alone at the end of Battleship Row, her decks and passageways were calm, her crew performing routine duties or preparing for the day's lighter weekend schedule. The Hawaiian sun rose in a pale gold haze over the Ko'olau Range, glinting off the calm waters of Pearl Harbor. Below decks, in the forward dynamo room, Warrant Machinist Donald Kirby Ross moved with the precision of a man who had spent his career in the company of turbines, switches, and humming generators. The steady drone of the ship's electrical systems was a sound as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. At 07:55 hours, the tranquility was torn apart. The first wave of Japanese aircraft came screaming in from the north, sunlight flashing off their wings as they swooped low over the harbor. The sharp metallic shriek of the general quarters alarm echoed through the Nevada. Lookouts topside shouted warnings, "Air raid, this is no drill," as explosions rippled across Ford Island. Below, Ross felt the vibration of the first torpedo impacts not on his own ship but on others moored along Battleship Row. Then came the blow to the Nevada herself. A torpedo slammed into her port bow forward. The shock reverberated through the hull, rattling every bulkhead and making the gauges on Ross's panels dance wildly. Over the ship's phones came the urgent call, "Stand by the generators. Keep them online at all costs." Ross acknowledged calmly, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting above. He understood the stakes instantly. The Nevada, unlike most of her sisters trapped in pairs along the row, was moored singly. If her power and propulsion systems could be maintained, she might be able to get underway, clear the harbor, and engage the enemy in open water. As damage control parties raced through smoke-filled corridors topside, Ross kept his attention on the glowing needles and humming machinery around him. His crew worked in a cramped, windowless compartment deep in the ship's bowels, where the outside world existed only as vibration and sound. The sharp bark of the ship's 5-inch anti-aircraft guns, the rapid staccato of .50 caliber machine guns, the dull crump of bombs hitting nearby. The forward dynamo room soon became an oven. Ventilation brought in smoke and fumes from topside fires, and the smell of burning oil began to permeate every breath. The ship's electrical systems were holding, for now, but a near miss above tore open ventilation ducts, sending superheated air and acrid smoke cascading into the compartment. Men pulled their collars over their mouths or tied strips of cloth around their faces, but the air grew thick enough to sting eyes and sear lungs. A sudden lurch of the deck told Ross the Nevada was moving. Above, her bridge crew had ordered the mooring lines cast off and her engines brought up. She was making a run for the channel. That chance at escape depended entirely on Ross's ability to keep power flowing. Then came the steam. Somewhere forward, a line had ruptured from either the torpedo impact or the concussive force of nearby bombs. Scalding vapor hissed into the dynamo room, clouding the space and making the steel decks slick underfoot. 2 sailors went down with burns, and Ross shoved them toward the ladder. "Up, get topside," he barked, before turning back to his consoles. The generators throbbed under load, every bearing and coil now at the edge of tolerance. Ross adjusted valves and breakers by touch, his gloves growing hot from contact with the machinery. Minutes passed in a haze of heat and noise, the compartment shuddering with each blast above. Eventually, the smoke and heat overcame him. His vision tunneled, his legs buckled, and the blackness swallowed him whole. Strong hands pulled him back to consciousness. Medics on the main deck forced clean air into his lungs and poured water over his face. Through blurred vision, Ross could see black columns of smoke rising from burning ships across the harbor. The Arizona shattered in a flame. The Oklahoma capsized. Men ran everywhere, dragging hoses, carrying stretchers, passing ammunition. But Ross's mind was still in the dynamo room. He shoved himself upright, ignoring protests from the corpsmen, and descended back into the ship. Orders directed him to shift operations to the after dynamo room. The forward space was untenable. The after dynamo room was no sanctuary. Here, too, the heat was punishing and the air tainted with smoke. But Ross knew the equipment knew its limits and coaxed it into steady output. Above, the Nevada's gunners fought on, but her movement down the channel drew the attention of Japanese dive bombers. Enemy pilots recognized the lone battleship making for open water and swooped in to finish her. Bombs straddled her path, columns of seawater crashing down on her decks. One bomb struck near the engine spaces, the blast reverberating through the hull and sending another wave of smoke and steam into Ross's compartment. He fought to keep the systems balanced, adjusting controls in the stifling dark, guiding the output to the ship's motors and pumps. His body screamed for rest, for air, but he held on, until once again the world went black. When he awoke topside for the second time, the Nevada's attempt to escape was over. The danger of blocking the channel had forced her captain to ground the ship deliberately on a mudbank off Hospital Point. Still under air attack, she fought to keep her flag flying. Ross descended once more to his post, working until the order came directly from the bridge: abandon the dynamo room. Only then, with the battle still raging above, did he leave his station for the last time. When the smoke cleared, the Nevada lay beached but upright. She had taken a torpedo and several bomb hits, yet she remained salvageable, thanks in large part to the power Ross had kept flowing in those critical first hours. Raised and repaired, she would return to fight at Normandy and Iwo Jima. But her survival began in the furnace heat of the dynamo rooms, where one machinist's iron nerve held the line against chaos and destruction. Donald Kirby Ross's actions that day were not a single moment of bravery, but a sustained refusal to yield, an unbroken chain of decisions, to face danger again and again for the sake of his ship and crew. Reflections and lessons learned. Donald Kirby Ross's actions at Pearl Harbor demonstrate that heroism is often measured not in a single dramatic gesture, but in sustained, deliberate acts, carried out under extreme duress. His decision to return to the dynamo rooms again and again, knowing the dangers, already injured and weakened, reflects a deep-seated commitment to duty that transcends self-preservation. In doing so, Ross embodied the Navy's core values of honor, courage, and commitment. From a leadership perspective, Ross's conduct is a technical mastery coupled with moral resolve. He understood his role intimately, knew the systems under his care, and recognized that his work directly influenced the ship's survival. Leaders and professionals in any field can draw from this example. Expertise is a foundation, but character determines whether that expertise is put to its fullest use when it matters most. Ross's story also underscores the critical but often unseen work performed by those far from the spotlight. In combat, not all heroes stand on the bridge or fire the guns. Some, like Ross, labor in confined, dangerous spaces where success is measured in the hum of machinery, the steady glow of gauges, and the knowledge that each second of operation buys precious time for the entire crew. In a broader sense, his actions remind us that resilience is as much a mental quality as it is physical. He faced heat, smoke, steam, and exhaustion, yet maintained focus on his mission. In a modern context, whether in military service, emergency response, or high-stakes civilian industries, this capacity to endure and remain effective in adverse conditions remains an essential quality for mission success. Donald Kirby Ross's name will forever be linked to the opening chapter of America's entry into World War II, not only as the first Medal of Honor recipient of that conflict, but as a symbol of steadfast devotion to duty in the face of overwhelming adversity. His calm persistence in the hellish confines of the USS Nevada's Nevada rooms ensured that his ship remained in the fight when others might have fallen silent. In remembering Ross, we honor not only his individual valor, but also the thousands of sailors, soldiers, and airmen who met the shock of December 7, 1941, with resolve rather than surrender. His life and service stand as a lasting testament to the truth that courage is often a choice made again and again, moment by moment until the danger passes. Sharing his story keeps alive the legacy of those who held the line at Pearl Harbor and inspires future generations to meet their own trials with the same unshakable resolve.